Amen. Thank you. Okay. First item up on our agenda is approval of minutes.
Move
from
for approval.
May 27, 2025. We got a motion, a second. Any additions, deletions, corrections? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is the Ashley River Crossing update, led by Mayor Cogswell.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Things are moving along nicely. Again, encourage anybody who is driving northbound on 17 to just look to your right and you will see the progress going on. Looking good. So I have, thanks to Mr. Martin, a few notes here. West Marsh work continues with concrete piles, caps, beams, and treads. 640 linear feet of permatrack boardwalk has been installed. You can see here the river work continues with 9 of the 17 drilled shafts completed to date. On the west side marsh, again, the contractor continues to work to relocating and flipping the crane pad, installing a boardwalk system to get the crane out. And in the river, you see the barges there. The contractor is to complete the 2 remaining drilled shafts into the river, and then we'll move on to the east side. So you see it all taking shape. Here's some great images, really coming to fruition, and you can see what it's going to look like here in the near future. So happy to answer any other questions or ask Mr. Martin to answer any questions.
Any questions around the table for any member of the committee? Looks like it's coming along nicely. And yeah, if you drive by, you really can see it. Looks great. So worth the wait. All right. No questions. We'll go on the next. What do we got next? Lowline Phase 1 project update. That is Mr. Martin.
So good afternoon. The Lowline Phase 1, we are moving forward we're now at a final schematic and a pricing set. We will have the first round of pricing done by 1 week from Friday, and then we'll be able to move toward establishing a GMP that we hopefully will bring back to full council in August. And as part of that, then we could move out toward construction documents with the groundbreaking still scheduled for the fall. And then later, we're going to talk a little bit about parking lots at Hugie Street South and Shepherd Street South, Hugie Street North. And again, the schematic design for Phase 1 is complete and pricing is underway. So everything is moving along very well.
And Mr. Martin, and as currently being projected, we still remain within budget on what was discussed, whatever it was, 3-4 months ago.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on the low line? There is a lot cooking in that corridor that you're going to hear a lot more about tonight, I do believe, Ways and Means at City Council. Any questions for Mr. Martin on this project? Better start asking because it's going to get going pretty soon. If you got any, better ask them. All right, Josh, thanks. And we'll keep going. Lowline construction request to accept transfer of ownership and maintenance of the streets from the SCDOT. That's Romney Street, Cypress Street, and our favorite Hugie Street.
So the Lowline Phase 1 from Mount Pleasant line has 3 intersections of true east-west streets, Hugie, Romney, and Cypress. And as part of that, we are designing mid-block crossings where the paths are coming across these side streets, and both the bike ped and the pedestrian. We've shifted the lanes of ped and pedestrian. We put the pedestrian against the neighborhood side of the street, and look at the side because we feel like it's a better transition. But what we're hoping to build are these mid-block crossings, and these are essentially what we see at Murray Road. As part of the Low Valley project, the exact same materials, exact same kind of palette that we're trying to use now as a template as we're moving forward. The cobble may be a little lighter, but other than that, it's pretty close.
That would be good.
And what we have is kind of this raised platform. So, for example, you come up, you have a platform. These are pretty much the exact same design as the Murray Boulevard. They're just a little bit larger in area because of right-of-way widths around 30 feet coming through this pathway. So we have 12 wide. And what we're asking is that for consideration from the committee that if we are not able to get to where we need to be design-wise, with a part of the DOT, good consideration be given that we take over those three sections from median along those three streets. So not the whole street, but just that mid-block kind of median. And there's also maybe a discussion where we would be doing some streetscaping work along Union Street. That's in between median and King, as part of the Lowline project. We're starting to identify some funding for that. And that's the case, that may be another trigger for us to take over that street. So it hasn't been ruled out quite yet, but these are all things we do so quickly that we want to maintain the momentum, especially.
We should want to be maintaining the momentum of the project, and right now it's about a 90-day lead time to go and request the streets to come out of the system, for them to come out of the system for a fall meeting of the board, the commission. So that's where we are. Murray Boulevard, the same thing. We took that out of the DOT system to do those mid-block crossings. And so just in anticipation to try to plan ahead, that if we feel like we are going to need to take them out, we would just like to have the blessing of the committee and council.
Any questions for Mr. Martin about this request proposal? Councilmember Gregory?
Yeah, between Hughie, between King and Meeting,
Yes, sir.
there's a lot going on in that corridor, including 275. And you said that we'll have to secure the funding to do the streetscape.
We think we have it identified already.
Okay, and because at one point, I think we had $2 million for mitigation purposes, I think.
Yes.
And there was some discussion that we take that 2 million and use it for affordable housing and have the folks who are developing along that corridor to take the cost of doing the streetscape.
So we're looking at all options, and that project, the Hughie Street Streetscape official project, the original one, was Meeting to Morrison. That was the section it was. And so what we're looking at now is, because we're building the low line of Hughie Street, there's a lot going on Hughie Street, and a lot of kind of pieces and parts, and the drainage project, and 275, and we're improving parking lots. And it just seems to be a natural candidate to clean up that street, get some more on-street parking. So I've been meeting a lot with all the business owners and the residents in that corridor, and they all, of course, want more parking. And so that streetscape would have on-street parking on both sides of the street, and a true protected bike lane. So the original plans for the Hughie Street streetscape from Meeting to Morrison had a bike lane that's floating in the cars, and this would be a design that would truly protect it, which would be a nice connection into the low line and just the other framework. And Hughie Street is such an east-west, probably one of the most traveled east-west streets on the peninsula from a neighborhood standpoint. I would put it up there, pretty highly ranked. And so, so we've been working with Amy and her team, and thinking about how we can eventually do all of it, but maybe this becomes the phase one, and we move across the street, because we're going to be mobilized in this area as well. So instead of tearing up all the infrastructure 2 or 3 times, we could do it all with one. And we're looking at all of those pots of money that you had mentioned, Councilmember Gregory as well.
Okay, thank you.
Move for approval.
Second.
So a quick question. So this pre-approval that we're about to vote on, and I think likely give you, what is the specific request going to be? Is it to take the street just at the intersections, or between the northern intersection and the southern intersection?
It would be to take the whole street from the edge of the right-of-way of King Street, the eastern edge, to the western edge of the right-of-way of Meeting.
Along Hughie Street?
And Cypress.
Inside,
Rodney.
okay, each one of those, all right. And okay,
If necessary.
if
If
necessary.
necessary,
And you said that's a 75-day or plus or minus lead time,
90-day.
90-day? So I mean, it's getting pretty compressed. What's the sort of the trigger point? What's the deciding factor?
We're getting ready to have some more discussions with DOT. We've been having thorough discussions with them. We've been sharing back designs and concepts, but I'm sensing we're getting to a point where we're either going to get a yay or a nay, and it's nothing bad. It's just, a matter of where we land on this. And so that's why we brought it forward at this point.
Agreed. I mean, I do want to take a moment here just to say that, DOT has been very helpful and good to work with. I don't want them to sound like they're the bad guy in all this. They just have certain standards, certain processes that are statewide that they have to adhere to and are concerned understandably about setting precedent. So this is a unique situation. A lot of situations in Charleston are unique, just given our how long we've been around, so to speak. So this is just providing us the option if they can't, get this approval through their process for us to not hold the project up and create the safety that needs to be there on these 3 streets and crossings.
And Mayor, I'll even add to the kind of the uniqueness of this in that we're dealing in geometries of streets that are very small, specifically Cypress and Romney are very narrow. So that kind of already sets it to be even more challenging. And then we're building a very non-standard project. And so if anyone, I think maybe we're not at blame, but we're creating the stickiness. And so that's just another piece of that.
Okay, any other questions? We've got a motion and a second to give pre-approval to this request should it be necessary. Back to the DOT. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we're rolling. Next, Lowline parking lots.
All right, Happy Land. Okay. So the Lowline parking lot, if you'll remember, when we put this out to bid and scoped the Lowline project phase 1, we had 3 revenue generating parking lots. And remember when we negotiated the lease with DOT, any revenue, we've created an endowment through these parking lots. So any revenue that comes out of these parking lots goes back into the project. It can't go to city funds. It has to stay in the Lowline. So it's a great use. And we're projecting right now that these lots will generate enough revenue to pay for annual maintenance year after year after year. So that takes a burden off, Parks Department and our staff and those types of things. So this is kind of an important revenue source for this project. And so to get these up and running, we've been working, and I have an approval from the DOT to make improvements, which you'll see later tonight at the Ways and Means Committee. And remember, we have a design build contract with Edifice and their team. This is in that scope, and we were establishing a GMP. This is kind of an early GMP for the parking lot portion of the overall project. And then we'll have the main event GMP that'll come later. So these are the parking lots that we plan to make improvements to that are light on the land. There are restrictions in the lease that if we do certain things, that triggers certain things to be more complicated and more expensive. And so right now we're making improvements to 3 lots for 1/3 of what was budgeted by the original capital project for 1 lot. So that's 3 lots, 1/3 the cost of 1 lot. And so those will be Hugie Street North. Make sure I get the microphone to say this. This is not the recovery room lot. This is the lot that's south of the Daily. So this is the Daily here. Plan is that we would make these light improvements. They would be, organized into how many spaces we could get, and in a geometry that's appropriate. And then we would next go out to bid for hiring a parking management company. We want these lots to be 24/7 because specifically we have an issue at the Hugie Street lots because all of these started, and then their policy was changed that they had to start paying monthly for parking to the tune of about $150 to $160 a month. So now a lot of people that are living in those buildings are parking there. The businesses, primarily the gym, Ethos, the distillery, and the brewery are thrilled that we're going toward this route. The buildings too, the multifamily buildings are thrilled because so everyone's kind of very much in support along this corridor for the Hugie Street improvements, and we would do 24/7, and it would be some sort of system that would require not humanless, let's call it, and that would be just an easier way to go through in terms of collection in a more efficient way. And again, we want to start collecting these revenues and get this up and running so that we can develop a pot of cash for the maintenance when we open the Lowline as well. So that's the Lowline parking lot. Again, that just an update on the plan for this. But then later tonight at the Ways and Means, there is the first contract amendment with Edifice, because this is in their scope that they were awarded as the overall project, to go ahead in phase 1A of phase 1 of the Lowline to make these light improvements to the parking lot so we can get them up and running and start to generate revenue.
Questions, comments?
Just a quick.
Councilmember Gregory?
Clarification, especially along UG, because right now it looks like a massive parking lot already. Are we talking about parking under the overpass? Okay, we're in the same place. And my follow-up question to that is, there are other opportunities throughout the city where there's space available under these overpass for parking. I've already been confronted by one parking person to see whether or not they could
manage.
yes.
Yeah.
And this is also, we're kind of treating this, Councilmember, as a pilot project too, because this is our first 24/7 enforced lot, I believe, outside of the structured parking garage, where we would have this ability that's humanless, that then can go and do the enforcement and the revenue collection. So we recognize those other opportunities. The other thing is we want to be cognizant of the Lowline not becoming too parking lotty along the Lowline. So we're trying to strategically think that through in this planning of phase 1 as well. And also to just get people used to, these are going to become, and a lot of people call me, I mean, I over 50 calls from gym members at Ethos that have said, I'm happy to pay to park because I think there's going to be more parking spaces for us available once we get it organized and, managed appropriately. So it's been very well received.
Mayor Cogswell?
Yeah, just want to give a shout out to Josh Martin for his efforts on this. I think it's been an awesome result. I think it's fitting that I'm sitting in Councilman Waring's seat because we all know he likes to talk about diverse revenue streams. And these 3 parking lots, I think, are going to provide great income to maintain what's going to be, I think, an incredible amenity for our residents in the Lowline. So compliments to you for putting this together and doing it in a way that I think was smart. I mean, just so you all are aware, he kind of skipped over the fact that we had a capital projects budget allotment for a pretty significant amount for just one of these lots. And we were able to bring in all 3 of these for well under.
So we had $1 million for the Shepherd Street lot, Mayor, for design and construction. And we're doing Shepherd, Hugie Street North, Hugie Street South design and construction for $330,000.
Right. So again, I think that deserves some accolades for staff and Mr. Martin for all of their good work on this one. So just want to say that, and I move for approval.
Got a motion in a second, just before we get there. I was keeping notes. Great presentation. I agree with the mayor. This is much needed. It's going to really help this whole project along. I don't think you told us when we complete all 3, how many spaces that represents.
All in, there are probably, I think it's right at 120
Yeah,
spaces.
that's what I
Yeah.
thought, 120. So 120 protected, lit, safe spaces that people can use to go on the Lowline, to go into businesses along there. Really going to bring a nice sort of edge to
And I
that.
also mentioned, we've been working with, we don't plan to sell monthly passes, except we are working with the businesses so that their employees can have monthly passes. So we've been working with Joey at Ethos, and Scott, Larry, and the whole gang along Hugie Street to make sure that this isn't hurting their business, but it's actually, working with them. So.
Well, the mayor made a motion and Councilmember Gregory seconded it. I guess that would be to let people at Ways and Means know that we approve of this at this committee. So on a motion to approve and bring it forward to Ways and Means for funding, any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
If there's any opposed, please be heard now. If none, motion passes. All right, next on our agenda is a chauffeur license appeal of Mr. Simmons. My understanding is, and someone from legal maybe just put it on the record, that matter has been resolved. Is that correct? Mr. Rumlin, there you are.
Yes, sir, that is correct. I've been working with Mr. Simmons' attorney. He needed one document that we didn't have, and that's since been remedied. So he's going to reapply, and that should take care of that issue. He did send me an email today saying he was withdrawing his appeal.
Okay, so that appeal is at least for now withdrawn. There was some question, I think, why we were beginning today at 3 instead of 3:30. I think it's because of this. We were actually going to have a full appeal, and we didn't. So thank you very much. Next, Safe Streets and Roads for All, SS4A. Mr. Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you all know, we've been going through this safety action plan development for the past 8 months, and I've invited Nick Jean from Kimley Horn, who's our consultant, to come here and give a presentation on the action plan and the draft results that they have. Looking to finalize this within the next month or so.
All right. Great. Please come forward. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. So as James mentioned, I'm Nick Jean with Kimley Horn, the consultant that's been working with the city to develop a safety action plan for the last 7 months or so. All right, there we go. All right, so I'll start off with a little bit of background. You may have heard some of this through previous updates from James, and I recognize a few people in the room that have been at other meetings that we've held throughout the process. But want to start by taking a step back and looking at what the issue is that we're defining here and why the city is developing this plan to begin with. So what you're looking at on the screen, which I didn't plan ahead for the screen being this small relative to the room, so apologize for all the small graphics up there. What you're seeing on the screen is crash history for the past 6 years of crashes occurring within the city of Charleston. So that probably looks like a lot of dots on the screen. That isn't every crash that's occurred. That's every crash that's resulted in either a serious injury or fatality. So to me, that's pretty staggering to see on a map. We've had more than 2,700 crashes that have resulted in either a hospitalization or a death. And you can see from the bar chart on the bottom left that the trend, it's wobbled up and down a little bit, but in general, it's been stagnant over the past 6 years. Turn this up because I'm a little bit taller. If we distill that down to just pedestrians and cyclists, we've had more than 1,000 crashes involving those vulnerable road users. As you can see, by comparison, only 2,700 of the more than 37,000 crashes that have occurred resulted in injuries overall, but more than half that involve pedestrians and cyclists ultimately result in injury. And contrary to the previous chart, you can see that this bar chart is slightly rising. So that's a concerning trend that we see. I think we're all well aware of the safety issues that we have across the city's transportation network, but it's helpful to see the data pulled together like this to really define the issue. And so, of course, in recent years, a lot of work has already been done. It's not like this issue has been ignored. The city developed the citywide transportation plan about 5 to 7 years ago that did have an element that defined safety issues across the city and looked at these hot spots that are on the screen as blue pins and segments there. SCDOT conducted a statewide pedestrian and bicycle safety action plan. Everything in purple and pink that's highlighted on the screen came out of that action plan or was explored as part of a road safety audit in recent years. And in the gold stars that are scattered about on the screen, there are actually 6 total safety action plans under development or completed across the region, including the town of Mount Pleasant, city of Folly Beach, city of North Charleston, town of Somerville, city of Goose Creek, and BCD COG for the region as a whole. So there's a lot of work that has been done already. What I think this map is helpful for showing is that everywhere that we've got, you know, the points and lines on there highlights where previous work has focused. There's a lot of red and orange dots on the screen that have not been part of that previous work, and so there's a lot more to be addressed still. So the safety action plan, which we started back in the winter of last year in December, is funded through a grant that the city applied for, I believe, back in 2023. And so through that grant, there's always a match requirement. So the city contributed 20%, federal government 80% to develop this action plan. That's the first step in a process that was defined by USDOT as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law that came out under the Biden administration, and it runs through next year. And so as part of the bill, $5 billion was allocated to safety across the country. There were two buckets that can fall into. I'll skip ahead for a second because they're shown here. There's planning and demonstration grants, which are on the left, which is what this plan was funded through. And then there's actual implementation grants to fund the construction of the projects that are ultimately identified. So the city so far is focused in this bucket on the left. Ultimately, as part of next year's cycle, the city intends to pursue an implementation grant to fund the projects that you'll see here on the screen in a second. So over the course of the 7 months, we've worked through this winding road here. We've had 2 rounds of public engagement to gather feedback from the public, both before and after we identified the countermeasures that we intend to implement as part of the plan. And then in the middle, a whole lot of safety analysis, really looking in detail at all of this data that was up on the screen. And I think what's different about this plan from the work that's been done previously is that there has yet to be a plan focused solely on safety that takes this comprehensive look at the entire city. There's been bits and pieces of that incorporated into other plans, but this plan is entirely focused on safety.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
When you say we, or just for clarity, and I apologize for not knowing this, but are you contracted with the city of Charleston or DOT?
The city of Charleston.
Making sure.
Yes, sir. So let's see, where was I? This plan is focused solely on safety, and so it's a really critical plan for the city, and the plans that are in development across the region are really going to be critical for the region in actually moving that needle and impacting these bar charts that we're seeing that are flat or rising over time. All right, so moving on to the goals and objectives of the plan, there are some more numbers at you because that's what engineers love to do. And so some of the numbers that you see on the screen informed the goals and objectives of the plan, some of the highlights that we see in the data and what we've heard from stakeholders in the community. As I mentioned, vulnerable road users, so pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, are overrepresented in the injury crashes that we see across the city. And if you crunch the numbers, if you're a non-motorist, you're up to 20 times more likely to be injured if you're involved in a crash relative to if you're in a car. Looking at schools, we have more than 50 public and private schools within the city limits, and nearly 30% of all of those red and orange dots I had on the screen before, all the fatalities and injuries occur within a quarter mile of those schools. The same number is true for those crashes occurring within disadvantaged communities, which, based on USDOT's definition that we're applying through this plan, it's those census tracts that are areas of persistent poverty throughout the city. So we have 12 census tracts that fit that category. And a good majority of the fatal and serious injury crashes that we've seen over the past 6 years have occurred in those census tracts, even though they constitute a relatively small portion by square area of the city. And then, of course, it's no secret that we have an aging population. The proportion of the population that's age 55 and older continues to increase, and we know very well that we have lots of non-residents in Charleston throughout the year. Just some numbers to put to that: over 140,000 trips a day made by people who don't live here. So working through this process, before we got into really analyzing what the data was telling us, we wanted to gather stakeholders together at the beginning of the project to help us define the goals and objectives. We held a safety summit at the Christopher Center in January, where we brought together those stakeholders, so city staff, peer agencies, fire, EMS, police, the school district, and advocacy groups like Charleston Moves were in attendance at that meeting. Really before we got into the data to tell us what are we seeing across the city in terms of safety that we need to be addressing through this plan. So you can see some of the highlights there, all things that shouldn't be too surprising. Some overarching themes with concern over e-bikes and golf carts, excessive speed, aggressive driving behavior, challenges with two-way left turn lanes in the areas of the city where those are prevalent. And of course, disconnect between the growth and infrastructure. We all know that the area has grown rapidly in recent years and it's difficult to keep up with that. So working through the feedback we got from the Safety Summit and the stakeholders and some of our initial data analysis formed this set of 4 goals and objectives for the plan. Number 1, to adopt a safe system approach. So that's an FHWA defined term that you can look up online if you search for that. It's this idea that's centered around some things that maybe we don't always admit. Number 1 being that crashes are inevitable because humans make mistakes. They're not accidents, which a lot of people refer to them as. There's always something that we can be doing at minimum to mitigate the risk of injuries occurring as a result of those crashes. And so while we would like to eliminate crashes altogether, the main focus of this plan is to eliminate those that result in fatalities and serious injuries. Number 2, to serve the city's many context areas and populations. I mentioned the different types of folks that visit and live here. We also have these unique areas throughout the city. We cover a broad area, so what you see on the peninsula is different from what you see on Daniel Island, James Island, Johns Island. And so this plan wanted to give dedicated focus to each of those areas and the issues that exist. And of course, as I showed before with everything that's going on across the region, there's fostering this collaboration. We have 6 other plans that are ongoing. We've brought those folks together to coordinate as we moved along with this plan. But it'll be important that as this plan is implemented, as their plans are implemented, that we're all in collaboration on that. As there are opportunities to pursue additional funding through the SS4A program, but also opportunities for us to take the findings from each of these plans and program those into our programs of projects that are being implemented across the region. And the last is to establish and maintain a safety culture. And so that's just going down to the individual person, raising awareness of the safety issues that we have, informing folks of what they can be doing to impact the numbers that we had on the screen, and in general, just bringing more focus and awareness to the challenges that we see with regard to safety across the area. So I'll quickly roll through this. Again, apologize for the graphics, not planning for the smaller screen, but hopefully what you can at least glean from this is that we got a lot of input from the public. So we had 2 rounds of public engagement, as I mentioned. Across those 2 rounds, we received more than 800 comments from the public with their thoughts on safety. So we asked folks what they thought in general, what their general perception of safety in the city was. That's what this bar chart on the bottom left intends to indicate. So the higher bars indicate that people feel more uncomfortable when driving, walking, or biking across the city. The lower bars would indicate they feel more comfortable. And the only area of the city where those bars were relatively low was on Daniel Island, which would make sense if you look at the crash data. Obviously makes sense as you see the very limited comments that are shown on this map. They don't even show up because there's so few relative to other areas. And also makes sense in terms of it being an area that was developed later on. Lots of low-speed traffic, and it's more isolated from the rest of the city. But the overall point is that, in general, the comments we received reflect this opinion of inherent unsafeness, for lack of a better term, across the city. The comments that we received most frequently were, number 1, improving bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Almost half of the open responses that we received mentioned that in some way. A third of the comments mentioned addressing driving behavior, so speeding, red light running, aggressive driving in general. And only about 20% outside of the bike ped infrastructure directly referenced improving the roadway infrastructure itself, which I thought was interesting. So in the second round of public engagement, this actually occurred a little bit out of order relative to the slide deck here, but after we had identified the likely countermeasures to come out of this plan, we polled the public on how they felt about those potential countermeasures and asked them for feedback with respect to those and whether or not we were targeting the right areas with those. So on the left, you can just see that in general, most of the public perceived the countermeasures as favorable, which you would hope to see when it comes to transportation safety, that it's very, very much a well understood issue that people wouldn't be against improving safety. The one category that the public didn't seem to quite grasp as much was upgrading traffic control devices. And I think maybe part of that is the term traffic control device sounds very technical. And maybe the public wasn't quite sure what that meant, but that was referring to installing or upgrading existing signage and pavement markings to make things more visible, clear, in terms of guiding and regulating traffic in that way. All right, so into our data analysis, what we spent a good bulk of our time on as the consultant on this project was taking all of the 40,000 crashes that are in the database over the last 6 years and figuring out what it means and where we need to focus our attention. So from this analysis, there's a GIS-based platform that we used to pull out a set of half-mile segments that represent less than 10% of the roadway miles in the city, but account for more than half of all of those fatal and serious injury crashes that have occurred. And when we do this, considering overall, but then also honing in on the pedestrian and bicycle-involved crashes, we end up with 130 segments, about a half a mile each across the city, as highlighted in red, and then the gold are the bicycle and pedestrian focused crashes that you see there. Underlaid in the blue is the recent road safety audits that SCDOT has completed. Felt that was important to include, given that almost the entirety of US 17, unsurprisingly, falls on this network, to see that several RSAs have been completed on 17, 61, and on Folly Road as well. But these segments form the basis of where we focused our attention in figuring out, okay, here's where we can get the most bang for our buck in terms of investing in safety improvements. This is where most of the injuries are occurring. Let's now look at each of these locations and figure out what the countermeasures need to be. So we started with this 130 segments. We coordinated with city staff, with our steering committee on the plan, and whittled that down to 53 locations that we focused our attention on. On the bottom right, since you can't see it, the number of locations by the different areas of the city, almost half on the Charleston Peninsula, given that most of the bicycle and pedestrian activity occurs on the peninsula, is a good reason why that number is higher. Just one segment on Daniel Island, 8 on Johns Island and James Island, and 13 in West Ashley. On the left there is just kind of the process that we followed to take all of the data and filter that down to these priority locations that we focused on. So in terms of countermeasure implementation, so this is kind of where we're headed and what'll feed into the next steps into next year, with applying for future grant dollars, as well as looking to get some of these projects programmed across the region. There's 4 main buckets that we organized the proposed countermeasures into. We've got intersection upgrades, pedestrian and bicycle facility upgrades, access management projects, and roadway departure or traffic control device projects. Those two were lumped together. So on the screen kind of just conveys the comprehensive nature of what we explored. And so as part of this process, our consultant team evaluated an inventory of all signalized intersections, as well as all unsignalized and signalized pedestrian crossings, to look for low-cost improvement opportunities. So places where we have substandard equipment at signals or markings or signage, to identify those for upgrade and align that with where we're seeing the greatest frequency of crashes. So a good majority of what is plotted on the screen there falls into that bucket. There are also locations that fell in our high injury network where we identified opportunities for other geometric improvements at intersections and so forth there. So in total, we've got 10 projects that fall into the intersection upgrades area there, but that really encompasses 50 to 75 total intersections that are kind of grouped within individual projects. Likewise with the pedestrian and bicycle facility upgrades, because a good majority of these are individual crossings that you could implement low cost improvements at. We only have 8 total projects, but several of those are many locations bundled into one. And so, as you're likely aware at this point, as part of the pedestrian and bicycle facility upgrades bucket, the city has pursued a demonstration grant through USDOT as part of this year's grant application cycle, to take a subset of these locations and install temporary countermeasures as an opportunity to gather data on how effective those countermeasures actually are before we scale up and implement that across the city. So the last two, we've got access management corridors, which if you were to compare this map on the left to the map where most of the crash history exists and where the high injury network is, there's a lot of overlap there. And because of that, a lot of these corridors overlap with things that have already been explored by DOT that are already included in other program projects. However, it's important that those locations are still highlighted in the plan, as for the plan's goals and objectives to be met, we need to address the crash history occurring in those locations. And there are still pockets that remain unaddressed, and opportunities to seek funding to address. As you can see in blue there, one is everyone's favorite roadway, Maybank Highway on Johns Island. There's a pocket on 17 in West Ashley that wasn't included in DOT's RSAs that's up there as well. And then the last bucket over here is these roadway departure and traffic control device projects. So think of that for the most part as your 2-lane roadways that exist across the city. We have a lot of areas that are transitioning that were once rural that are now more suburban or urban in nature, but we've still got these roadways that have narrow shoulders, worn markings, steep ditches, lots of trees. And so those locations are generally highlighted here as opportunities to mitigate the frequency and severity of crashes occurring on those roadways. So the last part that it only gets one slide, but it's really one of the most critical pieces of the plan, and it's going to take the most effort moving forward, is the education, enforcement, and evaluation piece. And all of this really, I like to think, folds into that establishing a safety culture. And so we do that at the individual level by creating educational opportunities, making sure that folks are aware of the safety issues that we face, what they can do to impact those numbers, and also to make sure everyone's aware of what the city is doing, what DOT is doing to impact those numbers. Because I think a lot of times the public doesn't see all the work that's being put in. And so this is a short list. There's much more that'll be included in the plan. But as part of this, the city, we're going to be pushing a Target Zero resolution out at a future city council meeting to formally commit to a target for reducing fatalities and serious injuries on the roadway. Other municipalities across the area have already done this or will do this as well. That helps to really bring accountability to what we're doing. It gives us an opportunity to have something to track against as well. That's the evaluation piece. And for all of this to be accomplished, it's going to require partnerships within the community and across different jurisdictions to really make an impact and move the needle across the region. All right, we're at the end. So next steps. So we've already, as I mentioned, the city submitted the demonstration grant application in June. We're here at the TNT committee meeting now. We are about to distribute the draft report for the safety action plan to our steering committee for review. There'll be a 2-week review period for that, and then the report will be finalized along with that resolution for Target Zero that I mentioned ahead of a city council meeting in August. And then ongoing, the plan doesn't stop here. There's a lot of work to be done in the future, as I covered. So that's all we have for that. Any questions?
Any questions? It was certainly comprehensive. Thank you very much. More to come. I'm still trying to figure out the connection between SCDOT and the city. Is this grant money that comes into us, then we hire them? Is that how that works? Right.
Yeah. DOT is not allowed to apply for the grant dollars, so then the city has to apply, but then DOT owns a lot of the roads, and so there's a permitting process there. But
I'm just looking at the headwaters of the monies that have gone into doing this, so got it. All right, any other questions from any member of the committee? Great, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing the final report. All right, next, I think Mr. Mathis, certificates of public convenience and necessity. There's 2 of them, MGM Grand 2 for taxi and Low Country Limousine.
Yes, sir. We have 2 applications. They've both been reviewed by staff and by our legal department, and we're recommending approval.
Can I get a motion?
Move for approval.
Any discussion, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. One item left on our agenda, and before we begin, I want to recognize Councilmember Boykin from County Council is here with us today. Thank you for coming and joining us.
She has a cowboy hat in the
This guy, yeah, that's right. Put the camera on him.
camera.
Right. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember McBride for our Maybank Highway, Riverland Road intersection safety improvement discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. Slide back there. So this is just an intersection. It's great timing with that last presentation we just had because one of the intersections that he highlighted was this intersection, the Riverland Maybank intersection. And just for context, the orange part there is District 3. That's my district. And adjacent to that is Councilman Ross Appel's district. And overlapping on top of that is Councilman Joe Boykin's district at the county level, kind of overlaps mine more or less. And then Councilwoman Jenny Honeycutt overlaps more or less Ross Appel's district. So several council members intersecting at this Riverland Maybank intersection. So I just put up there the traffic collision data the last 5 years on those 3 intersections combined. So it's Riverland and Maybank, Gulfview, and Maxey Road combined, just to show the context. And we're already just about halfway through the year, and we're already on pace to exceed that collision rate. There's the Hawk Light going in there soon, sometime hopefully by the end of this year, which is good news. And that's for more for pedestrian safety, just a little bit to the north east there on Maybank Highway. And just for context, down to the bottom left would be towards Johns Island, towards the Stone River. And it's an intersection we hear about all the time. And I know that, in the agenda packet, I put the 2018 city study they did on this intersection to come up with some ideas for improvements. And my understanding is the state shot down a lot of those ideas. So I wanted to, if you guys can give a quick 1-minute summary of whatever the status of the 2018 study that you guys worked on. And then I want to kind of just bring up some fresh ideas. And just for more context, I'm not talking about the ideas that I want to talk about. I met with Neil Sneath. He's the president of the Riverland Terrace Neighborhood Association. He's also a police officer on with the city for the last 17 years. He's been meeting with his constituents a lot, and he kind of refined some of these ideas I'm going to share here. These are meant to be low-cost interim ideas in lieu of eventually a major intersection improvement, which would come with Charleston County likely transportation sales tax 2026 funding. So I'm not talking about that level of safety improvements, just some safety improvement ideas that are relatively low cost and could be implemented relatively easily. So do you mind you guys talking about just kind of the 2018 and kind of how we got here?
Yes, well, I'd just like to add that, Charleston County conducted a study. They had Stantec Engineering conduct a study, basically reviewing this corridor. And they did come up with 4 recommendations, which was reviewed by the city, by DOT, as well as by the neighborhoods. There was some opposition with the recommendations, which was like to take away a lane of traffic, designate a left turn lanes, create a jug handle, which would, in a sense, loop through the neighborhood, and I think I might have mentioned restricting traffic on or left turn movements on Maybank. So all traffic at that intersection of Maybank and Riverland would go straight. Now, granted, the study that was done by Stantec was done in the count data they used was in 2017. So that was like 27,000 vehicles a day. We looked at the report for 24, which is like 37,000 vehicles now.
What?
So there's much more vehicles on Maybank now than back then when that study was conducted.
10,000 more a day?
More than that. What'd you say it was, 17?
17,000 to 20.
It was 27,000 in 17.
Okay.
And it's about 37,000 now.
So it's just some thoughts, and I live obviously in Johns Island, use Maybank all the time going to James Island. And I will admit it is very tempting coming off the bridge to have my speed maybe above what it's supposed to be going towards that intersection. I think that's a common thing. So I'm not surprised that there's accidents there just from this sheer speed coming from the east or the west on Maybank Highway. So some ideas that we had talked about sitting down with Mr. Sneath were just some flashing warning lights, speed warning lights coming from both sides of Maybank Highway. You had the idea of rumble strips across the road, which I guess there's an example on I-26 eastbound of rumble strips across the road, and maybe putting flashing speed lights in conjunction with the rumble strips to kind of get someone's attention and they see the speed or something like that. And then of course, speed limit reduction, and I don't know the rules when it comes to that as far as the state road. And then the five-headed lights issue, I think that the state already has said no to messing with the lights at that intersection as far as like arrow lights. Is that correct?
They would like to have a dedicated left turn lane.
A dedicated, okay, a separate new left turn lane. Got it.
Correct.
So that would be part of potential long-term plan with the county as far as the turn lanes, altering the turn lanes. But the other idea is, I just wanted to throw it out there and the T&T committee and to see if we could engage with, obviously the county and the state as to the warning light idea, rumble strips, things like that, or a combination to see if there's something we can do to get the rate of accidents down. And maybe it's in conjunction with the study that you guys just briefed a second ago, 2 items ago, that maybe in conjunction with that, there could be something we can do to get some grant money to just do some very simple solutions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yep, please.
So appreciate Councilman McBride bringing this up. This is something that it's obviously a very problematic intersection, contributes to traffic, and obviously from a safety standpoint needs to be addressed. And we have been meeting in part because of Councilman McBride setting this up on a regular basis with staff at the city level, myself, Councilman McBride, and a few other council members, I think, and then with Charleston County and their staff, specifically to talk about issues on Johns Island. And we actually have a meeting tomorrow where we are going to dig into this again, not these initiatives that Officer Sneap has proposed, but some potential mid to long range solutions for this intersection that want to discuss with the county in conjunction with DOT, make sure that we're all arm in arm walking forward on this. Don't want to get out ahead of DOT or ahead of the county. We want to be very collaborative in this, but I do think there are I'm optimistic, I will say, that there are some relatively simple solutions for this intersection and other parts of Johns Island that could be put in place without breaking the bank. So excited to talk about those tomorrow. I'm not sure what's going to come out of the meeting, but a lot of maps to be discussed. And I'm optimistic with this new direct line of communication that we can come up with some ideas that will get a lot of traction and can be put into place sooner rather than later. And if those can be is an immediate step, the rumble strips or whatever else we all deem appropriate, I'm all for it. So I just want to commend Councilman McBride for bringing this to the table and thank Councilman Boykin for being here and being part of these discussions. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And speaking of Councilmember Boykin, you're here. Certainly we'll recognize you. And if you'd like to address the committee, we'd be happy to hear from you. Please. If you don't mind, because we record everything, if you don't mind coming to the microphone, that will make our team's life a lot easier, right? You're making at least one person. There you go.
If y'all could zoom in on the hat.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Thank you for joining us.
well, first I'd like to thank Councilman McBride for the kind invitation to come here today, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, and all the council members here. We've been working for a while. It's been a godsend and a blessing to have Councilman McBride over on Johns Island now to have a seat at this very important table. We've been working collaboratively for some time. Obviously, we've got a mess on Johns Island and James Island as well, and thought no better opportunity than to come together and work together with the county and the municipalities. We're hand in hand. We're in the same boat for sure. And I think we've made a lot of progress on this. We have a lot more to do. But this is how it gets done. And I'm kind of here because I want to hear the ideas that come out of all this. And that first, one of these committee meetings I've come to, we do have a potential opportunity in 2026 for another half-cent sales tax referendum. And I'm very anxious to make sure we get good projects on this list. And we certainly have challenges at these intersections. And so the more we can work together and come up with some potential projects that might be on that list, now would be the time to get that work done so that they might be available to be included. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Okay, I see Councilmember Brady has his hand up, and then I've got a quick comment. Councilmember Brady, we see your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a quick question. This intersection's been, I mean, I've been on council almost 6 years, and there were some proposals several years ago, and I guess my question would be just, we're talking about short-term solutions. I guess I still don't understand, why can't we just hang a no left turn sign on Maybank Highway during rush hour? Because the left-hand turn is the most dangerous maneuver anyone does making a traffic maneuver. So especially during rush hour when those accidents tend to happen because of the increased volume, why can't we just restrict turn movements at that intersection? We do it downtown. There's tons of signs downtown. No right turn, no left turn. Why can't we do this in other parts of the city? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, well, Councilman Brady, great minds think alike. This has been discussed. And we do plan on talking about this tomorrow with the county is a potential option. There's some drawbacks to it. There's some concerns that DOT will have over it, which is understandable. There's some concerns potentially that the neighborhood will have over it as well. But one of the ideas that we potentially have, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves on this, because certainly want to vet it with the county, is to do a pilot program, collect the data, try it out, because this is not something that would be overly difficult to implement initially for a period of time, collect data, see if crashes go down, see how it affects the neighborhood, and then take it from there. So I like the idea. There's some more digging that would need to happen on that, more collaboration, but it'll be a topic of conversation tomorrow. And if you want, or any council member wants to join in that meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and this is at the county offices, you're welcome to do it. And if you want to be involved in them in the future, we can get you that schedule. I think it's quarterly that we have, and we switch from City Hall to county offices back and forth. Thank you.
Councilmember Brady, any follow-up?
No, I appreciate that. I mean, I was involved when I represented Johns Island, and it seems like it's a long time coming, and I'm really happy that that this intersection, especially for the folks that live on Johns Island, I know it's so frustrating. So I appreciate Councilmember Boykin and the city and the county's collaborative efforts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment, question? Councilmember McBride, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, a minute to wrap it up. Then I've got a quick.
Yeah, I know
comment.
thank you, Chairman. I know we're about out of time. Would you be willing to just comment about the ideas just conceptually, like the speed signs, the flashing warning sign, slow down intersection coming? Not that we would implement it, but just from a TNT perspective, what you guys think of that conceptually?
I'd just like to say, I mean, I think they're all good options. And again, I think that's the reason why we're meeting with the county tomorrow. We just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. We want to discuss, I want to say doables now, stuff that we might be able to implement sooner than later. So again, that's the reason why we're getting together tomorrow.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Just quickly, if you don't mind, quick chairman's privilege, Councilmember Boykin, thank you for coming. And you used 2 words in your comments to us, which I think are really appropriate. That's collaboration and resources. And I think everyone around this table, and if we had our full council here, they would all agree that we look forward to collaborating with the county on many things, particularly when it comes to safety of our roads throughout the entire county. And we look forward to tapping into all resources available to make sure that we do that. This is a really good example, but not the only example of the challenges and opportunities that we have to make our roads more passable and more safe. But I think we all can agree too that we need to work collaboratively to make sure the resources are there. And the half-cent sales tax did come up in your comments. And I can tell you, I think that we at the city, and I don't want to speak for the mayor, but I'm going to, okay, I'm going to, and I hope to be able to do so next year as we go out there and push for this, that we work together to come up with a really solid plan going forward for a half-cent sales tax referendum that will be met with general consensus that it is needed, that those resources will go for much needed infrastructure improvements and additions. And we are here to give you all the support that you need. And we hope that you'll lean on us to give you some input as you go to putting together that referendum. And hopefully, with hope, that we can have something in place that we all agree on this year so we can go out and preach the gospel next year and make sure that we pass it. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Councilmember McBride. And Neil, thank you for being here too, and for your community. A lot of work to do. All right, so that's the last agenda item that we have. Thank you. Is there anything else from any member of the committee that needs to come forward? If not, by acclamation, I'm going to declare us adjourned, and we'll see you all in just a few minutes at Ways and Means.